What's up, Space Pirates? This is your Admiral, the certifiably suave Dr. Disaster. And one of the least appealing things in the world is hearing someone use corporate buzzwords to try to explain themselves, because it is generally just a whole bunch of nonsense words that don't end up saying anything at all.
What the hell are you saying? I don't know!
In the gaming industry, we have seen this shit for years, from the likes of Microsoft, Sony, Ubisoft, and a whole host of others. They champion terms like DEI while using hiring quotas to fill out their workforce, and they pay strict attention to the immutable characteristics of the characters that they display on screen in order to foster an artificial balance, often at the detriment of story. They don't care about story, they care about presenting something that fits their diversity paradise. It's from these corporate shitheels that the term modern audience was coined. That isn't something that gamers made up. That came directly from these big corporate entities who believe they're doing something wonderful by pandering to a group of non-existent people that they imagined would take over gaming spaces and replace the original gamers.
You are wrong! All of you are wrong!
Well, Nintendo is one company in gaming that has used a lot of these buzzwords in the past, but they have largely managed to avoid making games which felt like pandering. Unfortunately, it looks like Nintendo is now steering into this attitude with the Nintendo of America president, Doug Bowser, telling us how important diversity is to their company.
What in the hell's diversity?
Yes, Doug Bowser, the same guy who told gamers a couple of weeks ago that if you can't afford a Switch 2, then just get a Switch 1. Well, he's spoken up again, this time talking about how important diversity and representation are to Nintendo. These guys desperately want to pander to an audience which doesn't exist according to their own statistics. In this survey here from Nintendo themselves, the survey suggests that the average gamer is a male ranging somewhere between the ages of 19 and 44. In other words, that female audience that they're trying to pander to doesn't really exist.
You said there'd be girls here.
Alright, me hearties, make sure you hit the like button on this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it already, and don't forget to give me a follow over on X, where I keep a list of games lousy with woke shit pinned to the account at all times for your reference. My handle on that platform is Dr. Disaster 1. But, in any event, let's dig on in to what Nintendo is saying on the topic of diversity, as they just kinda doubled down on the concept here. This article from Nintendo Everything lays it all out for us. It says here, Nintendo of America president Doug Bowser was recently asked about diversity and the role that plays within the company. During an interview, a Brazilian newspaper brought up President Trump and pressure to cut diversity policies. Bowser was asked if anything has changed for Nintendo. Nintendo has emphasized diversity previously, and it still appears to be important for the company in the present and moving forward. Given how diverse its actual users are, that seems to be a core focus, and I'm going to challenge that in just a minute here. Keep that thought in mind. But anyhow, Bowser brought up the need to attract a variety of talent in terms of their backgrounds, their experiences, and their understandings, because our players are diverse. Well, let's take a look at this survey again that I showed you earlier, which showcases who is using Nintendo across gender and age lines. As you can see, gamers that are 19 to 24 years old make up 20% of Switch users, 25 to 34-year-olds are a whopping 43% of the people playing on the Switch, and then 35 to 44-year-olds are 17% of Switch users. If you add those three categories up, they amount to 80% of the people playing games, meaning that 8 out of 10 people who play on the Nintendo range from 19 to 44 years old, but even more interesting than that is the bar on the bottom where they talk about the gender of the users. 86% of the responders said they were male, and only 11% were female, with the remaining 3% either not answering or being confused by the question, apparently. This information should tell Nintendo all they need to know about who they should make their games for. The vast majority of gamers are grown men. Now, we all grew up with things like Mario and Kirby and Donkey Kong because of the iconic nature of these characters, and because Nintendo developers are usually pretty good at making the gameplay of their games with an emphasis on fun, they are generally able to get by with a youth-oriented focus. That's okay. The average gamer still buys up games like Mario Kart and Super Smash Bros., and The Legend of Zelda in particular is popular as hell because it's the sort of game that appeals quite nicely to the demographic that Nintendo gamers fit into. Nintendo has largely not had games which most people consider to be pandering woke trash, though there has been what looks like it could be the beginning of a trend. Princess Peach Showtime came out last year, with the princess being the main character in her own game for the first time since 2005. The game reportedly broke 1 million in sales, but that is far from the likes of titles like Super Mario Odyssey or just anything that features Mario. The game featuring Princess Zelda, which released last fall, Echoes of Wisdom, that game has reportedly sold over 2 million copies, which is an improvement, but still, the overwhelmingly male audience of Nintendo just isn't going to be as naturally drawn to games that feature princess characters as they are to something featuring Link. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, both of those sold over 20 million copies, just to put things into perspective. Now, you can dislike that fact if you want. You can protest it, you can argue that it should change, but the fact of the matter is that the gaming audience is mostly male, and we aren't as interested in games that feature princesses. That being said, I don't actually think that these two games are necessarily woke or anything like that. I'm just noticing what could be the beginning of a trend. It's just something to keep an eye on. I have played a little bit of Echoes of Wisdom, and it's just fine as far as I'm concerned. It's just a game that isn't as interesting to me, if I'm being honest, and I play every Zelda game that comes out. I just haven't been very interested in making an attempt at playing this one yet because I don't find it as appealing. So hopefully Nintendo continues to make games that prioritize fun over DEI, though Doug Bowser paying lip service to the corporate buzzwords is quite discouraging. Now here's his full quote, Doug Bowser's that is, so you can get an idea as to what exactly he said. "We always want to attract the best talent we can and retain that talent. We also believe it's important for that talent to be diverse in terms of their backgrounds, their experiences, and their understandings, because our players are diverse. So we strive to have diversity that reflects our players in our organization. This is something that's been in place for years before people really started using the acronym DEI, and that will continue to be in place. It's important to us." In any event, you can't blame this guy for thinking he can say whatever he wants. After all, the last time he spoke up and said something asinine, telling players that if they can't afford a Switch 2, just get a Switch 1, well, he wasn't penalized for that at all. The Switch 2 pre-orders sold out immediately across the world. The problem is that the rabid Nintendo fan base is simply going to be too dedicated to Nintendo to say no. That immunizes guys like this Bowser fella against the backlash to his words, and he probably loved that this newspaper asked him this question about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the context that he was being gently pitted against President Trump, because the low-key strategy of Nintendo to avoid the backlash of their raised prices on the Switch 2 games has been to obfuscate the reason for this behind a curtain of journalists blaming the US tariffs. But I'm gonna leave it there. What do you think about the president of Nintendo of America doubling down on DEI in the current climate? Drop your thoughts into the comment section below, and we will talk there. Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your Admiral is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.